You're listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. Each week, your host, Polly ReQua, interviews veterinarians and individuals in the pet industry from across the nation answering pet questions. Bark and Wag podcast is produced weekly for your enjoyment, and show notes can be found at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. That's BARKNWAG.com. Please remember to subscribe to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk.
Welcome to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. I'm your host, Polly ReQua. Today we're talking to Dr. Meredith Rives, owner of Natural Touch Veterinary Care in Evanston, Illinois, about puppy mills. Welcome, Mary.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
Well, I wanted to talk about puppy mills and how we can stop this awful business. So I know that you are an expert in the topic, and please tell us, what is a puppy mill?
So that's a great question. A puppy mill is any facility that is breeding dogs that regards quantity over quality. So typically these facilities are breeding a lot of dogs, and in some states that definition could be more than 5 breeding females at any one time, or litter sizes over a certain amount. But for all intents and purposes, what we're talking about here today is any time quantity of animals bred is more important than the quality of the animals bred. We're going to put it into the category of a puppy mill.
And where are people selling the puppies?
So the way that it works in general is this, and I want to specify something very important. Puppy mills are legal. And that's what people need to understand. They are legal. And because they're legal, there are laws that surround them. And I want to talk just briefly about that. The USDA is responsible for licensing puppy mills. So that means that various state agencies, like departments of agriculture, or whatever their title may be, are then responsible for inspecting these facilities. The problem with this entire scenario is that the inspections happen too infrequently, they're usually not thorough, and the rules by which everyone plays are much too lax. So the USDA is responsible for licensing them. If you're a puppy mill, you do need by law to get a license in order to sell your animals.
So there's not enough staff to check.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. There are usually too few people on site to be caring for the animals properly. So the animals suffer with malnutrition, disease. They lie in their own excrement in terribly unsanitary conditions. They often struggle with common ailments like parasites and ear and skin infections and GI disorders, which is gastrointestinal. I mean, the list is endless. But then there's this whole other component people don't think about, and that is that they actually have a lot of untended medical problems that are more substantial than the ones I just listed. And they also have genetic things that happen within those different lines of dogs that no one takes any responsibility for. So because these animals are bred in poor circumstances by irresponsible people, the likelihood of any genetic screening that would be done by responsible breeders, for example, is non-existent. They don't care. So again, it's all about quantity, not quality. And the other important thing to note here is that the way these animals end up in pet stores, in all likelihood, there's 2 ways that animals leave a puppy mill and get into the hands of an owner. One is by way of being put in a pet store, like the type of pet store you'd see in a strip mall or a mall or any place, right? Those animals are in all likelihood from a puppy mill. And also they can be sold online. Both versions require a USDA license. If a puppy mill wants to sell online, let it be known that if there's any evidence of a USDA license number on that website, in all likelihood, those animals are from a puppy mill. That's one of the telltale signs that an animal came from a puppy mill is a USDA license number present on the website, or if the breeder has one. Because remember, small-scale responsible breeders don't need to be licensed by the USDA. Only large-scale ones. Large scale is a red flag. The other way they end up in people's hands is by way of a pet store, and they can get there by 2 methods. One is direct sale from the puppy mill to the pet store, and that would mean that little puppy in the cage at the pet store has a USDA license number attached to it, and you should ask for it if you're at a pet store, because that'll be the telltale sign of an animal from a puppy mill. The other way they land in a pet store is by way of a puppy or dog broker. These are third parties that come in, buy a bunch of puppies from puppy mills. They don't need a USDA license, and then they distribute them to various pet stores all over the country, and they do this by car or truck. And many times these animals die on the way to their ultimate destinations because their care is so poor and they're already so unthrifty to begin with. The important thing to know about dog brokers is they require something called a health certificate to cross state lines with these dogs. So if they're crossing state lines, these dogs should have a health certificate attached to their name. If they do, it brings up another good question. Did they originate at a puppy mill? And the answer is in all likelihood, yes. So those are three major ways these animals go from puppy mill and land in a pet store or in an owner's hands: online, by way of a puppy broker, or direct to a puppy store.
So how do we stop the suffering?
So the reality is that you absolutely learn what it takes to identify where a dog came from. You buy nothing over the internet, sight unseen, nothing. And pet stores stay away from them. In general, the word adopt is used very liberally and oftentimes does not apply to what's happening in a pet store transaction. They will use that word because they can. They're allowed to use any word they want to get dogs out the door. And if that word appeals to people, people don't ask questions. They just figure these animals are coming from some type of a rescue or shelter situation. It's a bad assumption. Ask for more information. By law, these pet stores have to have every single thing listed on the card that is attached to the puppy, meaning that's attached to the existence of the puppy. On the cage door, what have you, there's a file. Technically, it's supposed to be seen. So if you can see any of this information, ask for it if it isn't visible. Read about it. Get more information. But my best advice, of course, is to never engage in the purchase of a dog from a pet store or online. Go to your local shelter or rescue organization and get a dog. It is the only way to stop this. People feel like if they go and they buy, they're saving a life. Look at that poor tiny puppy. It looks so sickly. If I just buy this one and save its life, I'll be making a difference. The reality is it's just feeding the beast. It is feeding the beast. So resist the temptation to contribute in that way. Turn around and fight with your legislators about getting stronger laws to protect these dogs and abolishing the existence of puppy mills, and go and adopt a dog from a reputable rescue or shelter. It is the only way to stop it.
And are there certain laws that are working on dissolving puppy mills?
There are. I mean, it's gradual, but it's happening. In the state of Illinois, for example, where I am, we have things called like a puppy lemon law, which is 72 hours to determine that an animal has either a genetic disorder. Well, actually, you have a year to determine that there's a genetic disorder that would require significant medical care, and you can return a dog. Or the puppy lemon law, which applies 72 hours to most dogs, that if they come home too sickly to even manage their medical condition, you can return them. That's not really a law that protects puppies, because what are you returning them to? You know, their own private purgatory. So that's not really where we want to head. The laws that do protect dogs say stronger inspection is important, more frequent inspection is important, and also some laws around how many breeding females any facility can have are important. And laws like that would restrict the amount of the quantity of breeders in any given state. And the laws around puppy brokers and things like that. We want to make it harder for them to do business, not easier. There's really no redeeming quality in the puppy mill world. There's nothing redeeming about it. And these people don't care about dogs. They will tell you they love them. That's not the goal. The goal is money, money, money. And when these animals have met their match and they've lived out their reproductive life in these hellholes, they are then sent to auction. And they are usually auctioned off for pennies on the dollar. And who knows where they land in that condition. So I guess I would say the laws are at work for us, but they're still in progress. And organizations like the Humane Society of the United States, the ASPCA, and of course organizations on a smaller scale but are doing super impactful work are great, like the Puppy Mill Project, which is actually located in Chicago. They're an outstanding resource for what's next in this realm and what we can do to help.
I've never even heard of a puppy broker.
Yeah, puppy broker is an interesting concept. It's one of the ways they kind of get away with not having a USDA license too. If they don't sell online, they don't need one. And if they only give to puppy brokers, they do all the transport for them. So next thing you know, you have a puppy broker who will buy all its dogs in Missouri, which by the way, Missouri has a couple of the worst and I guess biggest puppy mills in the country. They'll go and sweep up a bunch of dogs and literally drive them all over the country. And these are baby dogs. These are tiny puppies that in all likelihood shouldn't even be away from their mother. That's a big deal. And so these puppy brokers make money. and there are much looser laws around that type of business. The important thing to know here is there's actually a veterinarian in that mix. Veterinarians have to sign off on health certificates. So when a puppy broker goes and gets all these dogs, they have to take them for an exam and have a vet sign off to get a health certificate that says they can cross state lines. Remember, all of this is on the assumption they're doing business on the up and up. If they're doing business on the sly, none of this matters. They're scooping up puppies, they're paying pennies on the dollar. At the puppy mill, they're going and they're making all their money third hand from the pet stores. So it's a big racket. When we say there are USDA licenses involved, that's on the assumption that they're obtaining them properly and that everyone involved is following the laws. Another important thing to note about this is the Amish actually are very involved in puppy mills. And I think people want to attach themselves to the bucolic facade that is the Amish community. And I'm sure I can't speak to all Amish people in every Amish community, but I can tell you, since we're just talking about puppy mills, they are some of the biggest offenders.
Wow,
so we
really?
have firm knowledge that in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, where there are large Amish communities, there are several puppy mills working right now. So I just want to send the message home that the website looks pretty and there are flowers everywhere and green grass and puppies frolicking and happy mamas breeding dogs. Do not assume that things behind that website are anything different than purgatory. It is a nightmare. So I just want to send that message home that a website means nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Well, I would love to have you back to talk about it some more because this is very eye-opening, and obviously we want to make sure that pets are not suffering and, to get behind laws to protect, our pets. So this is very eye-opening on how this pet community that we're part of with this podcast can help you and other veterinarians put a stop to puppy mills.
Yeah, it's a tragic and heartbreaking cycle. And the reality is when someone gets a dog from a puppy mill, they have no idea what they're getting. These dogs come in all breeds and all mixes of breeds, these custom sort of boutique breeds that come up like Labradoodles and things like that. They're usually opening up a can of worms when they get these dogs. And I mean that, literally and figuratively. These dogs have tons of health problems. And we know that that's a frustrating state to be in as an owner of a new dog, let alone one you've had for years. There are unnecessary expenses and a lot of heartache. And sometimes these puppies don't make it. Early in my practice, I remember very vividly having a puppy mill Yorkshire Terrier come into my practice who died within 3 days of ownership. And how devastating and heartbreaking and unnecessary. So these things do happen. They're real. And oftentimes these dogs are plagued for the rest of their life with health problems. So that's one big reason not to get involved, among other ethical conundrums that we face in this business. That's a big one. So I would say we estimate there are approximately 2 million animals per year that are bred in puppy mills. And that's, again, an estimation just based on how many are licensed and how many puppies they're churning out and how many we think are not licensed but exist. So think about that number and think about how many animals are dying in shelters every day around this country. It amounts to numbers in the millions a year as well. So we could take those numbers and flip them around and we'd be in a great place, right? Buy fewer dogs, adopt more, and we're going to be in a better spot.
Dr. Meredith Rives, thank you very much for talking to us today about puppy mills. What a hot topic. I would love to have you back to delve into this and discuss more actions dog owners can do on a local and national level. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, you bet. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, www.barkandwag.com, to your friends and other pet owners. Have a pressing question for a veterinarian? Ask your question at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. This has been a KFR production. Join us next time for another edition of Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk.